record to the cloud. All right, and away we go. And back over here. Perfect. So again, good morning and thanks for joining us. Greg Stoltz, for those of you who just logged in, New Readers representative and national trainer. With me today, my esteemed colleague, Rebecca Eller-Molitas, who not only serves as an educational sales consultant, but teaches ESL at Elgin Community College, just outside of Chicago, Illinois.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. Thank you, Sid.
Fun fact, Rebecca, who I affectionately call Bex, if you haven't heard it yet, and I both began our teaching careers in Japan. So I thought it might be fun to deliver this morning's presentation entirely in Japanese.
Ohayo gozaimasu.
Ohayo gozaimasu, minasan. Ja, yarimashou. And people are already logging off. No, I'm just kidding. Stay on with us. Anyway, if you have a second device handy today, mobile device, like a tablet or a smartphone, even a second monitor, which would be outstanding, which will allow you to open a new browser, please have it ready. And if not, don't worry, it's not required. It will just heighten the experience for you. Our session today is standards-based reading instruction using the news, both in person and virtually. And yes, we will show you. And yes, I could have made the title a little bit longer, but I would have had to make the picture smaller. So it is what it is. All right. Let's move forward. Here's how we're going to do this morning. First, we're going to define evidence-based reading instruction, or EBRI, as we may start calling it, and its 4 key components. Next, we'll discuss the importance of using news as a vehicle for reading instruction. And then we'll examine the news resource, connecting its different features to relevant skill-building opportunities. We'll then demonstrate how to facilitate standards-based instruction in person and virtually using 3 activities. And we'll wrap it up by fielding questions and posting a link to reproducible graphic organizer PDFs and a lesson planning template to boot.
Before we get started, we'd like to learn a little bit about who's in the room with us this morning. This could help us tailor our presentation to you, the audience. So I'm going to pop up 3 polls on your screen in Zoom right now. If you could please answer these 3 questions. They are all within one poll, so you'll need to scroll down to see all 3 of the questions, please. And I'm sorry, we experienced a technical glitch and the poll closed early. Can you give this one more try for me, please? About 5 more seconds. Okay, and I'm going to share the results with you all now. So it looks like we have people with us today from both community and technical colleges and community or faith-based organizations. Many of the people who are with us are instructors, but we also have some program administrators in the room, no volunteer tutors today. And we have people teaching ESL, ABE, and ASC high school equivalency. Thank you so much for sharing. When you see this green exclamation point on a slide, it means we're citing information found in a Department of Education report called What is Evidence-Based Reading Instruction and How Do You Know It When You See It? This is very readable. It's in the public domain and available on the DOE website, but I have loaded it for you into the free resources we're going to share at the end of the session if you're interested in digging deeper into this topic.
Evidence-based reading instruction can be defined simply as instructional strategies that are grounded in data and feedback about student improvement. According to the National Reading Panel and Susan McShane's work, there are 4 principles of evidence-based reading instruction, and these are also what the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, and the Student Achievement in Reading, the STAR Project, consider to be essential components of reading. One is alphabetics, and these in no particular order, and that the combination of skills that allows readers to identify words in print. So phonemic awareness, phonics, decoding, and so on. We can't take for granted, I'm sure that you don't, that our adult learners have a good handle on this. Working on phonics, word analysis, word parts, word families increases student success with reading, and it helps readers to identify and learn new words. Vocabulary, essential for a reader to know what words mean, to be able to extract meaning from the text, but also as the reader's vocabulary grows, she or he will be able to read a broader variety of materials and at higher levels. Vocabulary at lower levels could include learning sight words, as well as words that follow regular patterns, right? Reading comprehension skills and strategies are vital as they help the reader understand things like how the information is organized, how to extract meaning, how to combine or synthesize ideas, and fluency, reading quickly and accurately. If the reader is concentrating on decoding words and putting them together to make sentences, then what is she or he not focusing on? The content, right? Comprehension. Fluency is also reading with proper emphasis and inflection or prosody, which adds meaning to what's being read. And as reading becomes easier, it also becomes more enjoyable, which increases motivation. And that's so important. And let's remember that a student's motivation to read is fueled not only by visible progress, but also by connecting reading materials to personal interests, including learning and life goals.
Now that we've defined EBRI, let's take a look at a lesson model. First, you should know that according to research, the instruction needs to be systematic, sequenced, direct, and explicit. We can see by the template that the first 2 prerequisites are satisfied. In this presentation today, we'll demonstrate a lesson built on this model, and you'll see that instruction's also direct and explicit. Each new skill or strategy or new word is first explained, then modeled, followed by guided practice, and finally an independent practice and application. This is not the only template that works for following this model, but this is one that we really like and often use when we build text. So the first part of our EBRI lesson model is a warm-up section, and there are multiple components within this. Identifying the objectives and doing some discussion starters to begin to engage students with the topic, some phonics work to prepare them for any new sounds or blends that are coming up, and some vocabulary work. We do all of that before we actually move into reading the piece. Once we start our reading section of the template, we have some strategies to implement before you begin reading, some strategies to use while students are reading, some strategies to use after the reading, and fluency work. Next, we move into word work. This is a great place for identifying word parts and reviewing vocabulary. And finally, we end the template with a wrap up, which is a think and discuss activity related to the material. Do we have time for this, Sid?
You know, I would say we need to surge ahead and not make this as interactive as we had first planned, Bex.
Okay, do we want to use the chat feature?
I will leave that to you.
Okay, my friends, I'm sorry, because of our technical difficulties, we're a little bit off schedule here, but we would love to hear a couple of ideas about why you might use the news for instruction in your classroom. If you could go to the chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom and drop in any ideas that you would like to share, we would love to hear them or see them. Connecting students to their community. Current events are great conversation-based ESL classes. Current events are relative to everyday life. We can address current issues and events and how they relate to social justice. Students have the opportunity to read topics of interest. The news is evolving, so we can always gather a lot of new discussion and questions. These are excellent. And one more. Meaningful information that applies to everyday life. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Great.
Current content on world and national news, as you all said, economy, health, education, history, science, the environment, social justice, sports, human interest, animal stories, the arts. All of these things are part of the news. As someone's saying right now, it makes you well informed. It's a great way to introduce relevant vocabulary, idioms. Every issue comes with a crossword puzzle, which some students really enjoy for vocabulary and spelling, and with discussion questions.
Wonderful. Great thoughts. Bex, is it worth taking the time to mention Padlet and Slido and such, or should we just push forward?
I think we should continue on.
Me too.
Thank you.
All right, so now let's take our resources to see how we can apply the principles, the lesson template, and the activities for EBRI, evidence-based reading. News for You is a weekly newspaper for adult learners offered in print and digital format. Articles from the Washington Post and Associated Press are carefully rewritten with permission, 48 weeks out of the year. 4 of the stories at reading levels 4 to 6, or at a low intermediate and ESL speak, and 3 at levels 3 to 4, or like a high beginning. For higher level readers, you can apply these same principles to other resources. There's Newsela is out there, or Common Lit. Some would even, for those learners who are able, turn to something like the USA Today or a local paper. Let me show you how to access News for You online. And here's where that second device or monitor could come in handy, folks. So grab them if you got them. Ready? Here's how we'll do it. What we do is we type newsforyouonline.com in the search bar, the search box. So on your tablet or a second monitor or phone, if you're able, type in newsforyouonline.com, and then this should pull up, and you'll type in the password that I'm about to give you in the box next to the yellow arrow shown on the slide. All right. And that password is Sid Bex, for Sid and Rebecca. My name is Greg, but Bex calls me Sid. So Sid, that's why we were chuckling in the beginning.
We really needed some entertainment during the pandemic, as I'm sure you can all tell.
So Sid Bex is the password. And by the way, this password is good for the next couple of weeks. I encourage you to use it to share it, because you're going to get addicted to this resource. Folks, News for You comes with a teacher's guide for every issue. Each guide has a full lesson plan for one of the 2 front page stories, aligned to a Common Core and College Career Readiness Anchor Standard. Every article has an activity: matching, true, false, multiple choice, fill in the blank, graphic organizers, and they target skills and strategies like counting syllables, phonics, vocabulary, synonyms, antonyms, homonyms, word parts, close reading and citing evidence, fact versus opinion. What else? Main idea and supporting details, compare and contrast, paragraph writing, and I could go on all morning, I won't. There's a discussion question for each story, which could easily be flipped into a writing assignment, by the way, if you really want to milk it. And an answer key that also indicates the reading level for each article. So where you can see it, not the learners, where it could possibly, discourage them. And here's what it looks like: a full lesson with an anchor standard. Let me blow this up to give you a better view. There it is: Common Core Career and College Readiness Anchor Standard, right? Learners will talk about their daily lives before reading, everyday habits. The answer key with reading levels, and we share the reading levels in the teacher's guide, again, not where learners can see them and possibly get discouraged. And an activity and discussion question for every story. Here's one from an article we'll see a bit later. No blondes allowed. Experiment 50 years ago. So to get started today, we're going to use a story from the June 17th, 2020 issue, History's Ghosts Are Haunting a Hurting America, reading level 4 to 6. And what we would do if you're in on your own is click on the archive tab that I'm showing here, and then type ghosts in the search box and click on the article. Should be about the 5th one down. History's Ghosts Are Haunting a Hurting America. The archives, by the way, go back to 2008. 7 articles a week, 48 weeks out of the year, back to 2008. You are not going to run out of material here. So we'll start by reading the lesson objectives, identifying the reading topic. That's history repeats itself in America, right? The skill that will be learned and practiced, compare and contrast in this case. And new vocabulary words: pandemic, impeached, charged, woven, and movement. Then to launch a discussion starter, we'll use these photos from the story. And if you're following along on your second device, click on the arrows on the left and right sides of the first photo and it'll move you to the other one. How are these photos the same? How are they different? What's happening in the photos? This is just to get discussion going, right? And build toward the lesson. Get them engaged, right? What's happening in these photos? Using the student responses to generate even more questions. The most challenging part of this exercise could be finding a place to stop it.
And you may even find here that your students are familiar with some of these photos. One of the photos, the top photo here, is taken in Chicago. And I sometimes have students who recognize this photo and remember personal experiences from these events.
Yeah, well, that's age defining, so I wouldn't admit to that, but that's just me. So even at higher reading levels, we can continue to work on phonics, word analysis, word parts, and word families to sharpen students' reading skills. And here's a good example. In this activity, we could use a graphic organizer to list GH words from the passage under their respective sounds and brainstorm other ones, right? So the words ghosts and flight are actually in the article. But from that, we could, in the graphic organizer, get the students to come up with other words with the GH that have the G sound, like ghetto and spaghetti, The silent GH sounds like might and night, height and weight, taught and daughter, and the F sound of GH, rough, tough, enough, laugh, laughter, and cough, right? As we move on to vocabulary, use direct instruction to explain each word, model it, then have students work with each word using prior knowledge and personal experiences to write and talk about them. Here's an example of how to work on vocabulary with students attending class in person. First, introduce the spelling, pronunciation, and definition of the new word. For example, charged, right? Officially accused of doing something wrong. Next, model usage in 1 or 2 sentences. The baby was charged with stealing candy from a grown-up. Or maybe I got that backwards. Anyway, then using blank index cards, as you see here on the slide, have students write the word on one side, they're charged, and then flip the card over and draw 2 perpendicular lines, as you see here on the slide. In the top space, have them write the definition in their own words. Maybe they say, okay, so charged means arrested for a crime. Good, that's how they remember it. Next, ask them to think of a synonym, blamed, and or an antonym or opposite of the word. Having them come up with similar or opposite words is a great vocabulary muscle builder, right? Identifying the word released as the opposite of charged can give the student a better understanding of the word. Have them write the word or words in the second space. And finally, ask them to think of the word based on what they may already know about it and or on their own personal experiences and use it in a sentence. As is here, my brother was charged with assaulting a battery. I still think I got that one wrong, Bex. No matter.
We'll work on this after the presentation.
Oops. Concluding the activity, by pairing up, sharing definitions, examples, experiences is a great activity. Remember, using the word in conversation is a powerful mnemonic strategy. And your students can create vocabulary index card library and use them as flashcards for study or review.
In Chicago, we're still doing a lot of our teaching remote or hybrid. So we wanted to share some options with you for doing these same type of activities if you're in a digital environment. One of the things I really like is Google Jamboard. It can be fun and it's a free and simple tool that helps students practice key concepts and strategies. Jamboard is an interactive whiteboard and online collaboration tool. This is a photo that you're looking at, so this slide isn't interactive, but you can see that this is a basic vocabulary practice activity for our History's Ghosts articles. The yellow Post-its are vocabulary words, and the blue Post-its at the bottom are definitions. I share a link to the Jamboard with students through the chat feature, and then I send them into breakout rooms to work with a partner or small group to complete the matching activity by dragging the definitions with the mouse and placing them on the correct vocabulary words. This does also work on a cell phone, but it is pretty small. So if you have a lot of students in your classroom that are using only a smartphone. I have some of those. I like to test these out on my own phone before I assign them to the class to make sure that they're readable. I create one slide for each group. You can see up at the top of the slide, there are some rectangles with a 1/2. That lets you know how many slides are in your deck. And one great thing about this is that it's really easy to duplicate a master slide. So you can create this once and then just duplicate it for all your breakout groups. You don't have to type these over and over. Just like with Google Docs, you can watch what your students are doing in real time, so you know when you need to visit a particular breakout room to provide extra support, or when you need to provide an additional challenge for a more advanced group. I typically use this type of activity for basic vocabulary matching practice before I move on to a higher level vocabulary practice activity where students are required to produce either the word or the definition. One thing that sometimes works, depending on digital literacy and level of the students, is Quizlet. So sometimes we move on to that as the next level after this. We're going to have some time at the end of this presentation for Q&A, and if you're interested in seeing a live Jamboard or have more questions about it, I'll be happy to demo it at that time. I like it as a tool for basic digital literacy because I'm often teaching students in the beginning to mid to high beginning ESL category. And this is a good tool for them because my particular institution provides everyone with Gmail addresses.
Well, we finished our warm-up. Yeah, that was just the warm-up. Now, let's get ready to read the story. From the headline, the caption, and the photos, from prior knowledge, what predictions might your students make? And let's park here for just a minute. I'd like you to post in the chat, if you would, some leading questions that you might ask students about the headline and the photos here. Take just a sec or two, if you would. What kind of questions might you ask about the photos to prepare your students for the reading?
What do you think's happening in these photos? Have you seen similar images like this in your own country? What do you think happened before the photo was taken? What do you think happened after? How are the photos the same? Tell me about this picture.
Great. You know, if I had to guess, I think that you guys have done this before.
What story is this photo telling? Thanks,
Great.
everyone.
Great. What's meant by history's ghosts? What does that mean, right? If they're looking at the title, you know, and can you think of any ghosts from history? Jacob Marley, but I think that's different. I'm just having a bad morning, Bex. As students read the story, encourage them to try to make connections to their own experiences. Take another moment. Have you ever experienced or witnessed the following? Protesting, picketing, discrimination, a contagious illness, police brutality, unemployment. This article references all of these situations and more. Now, just based on those topics that I spit out, how many of you now could go to breakout rooms and share some of your experiences with others? Quite a few, I'll wager. When we can identify with what we read, we're more engaged, and both comprehension and retention will increase. Okay, on to after you read. In this article, there are more than 10 major events mentioned dating from 1918 to the present. And here are a few ideas. Have them return to the text and answer questions about when, where, and why different events occurred. This is a good example of close reading, and defined by Dr. Douglas Fisher, San Diego State University, as the careful and purposeful reading and rereading of a text, right? Close reading and citing evidence. And this satisfies college career readiness reading strand, anchor 1, that says, and I'm paraphrasing, read closely to determine what the text says explicitly and to make logical inferences from it. Cite specific textual evidence when writing or speaking to support conclusions drawn from the text. If you're working in an actual classroom, you could write the events minus their dates on big cards and hand them out, right? And then call students up to the front of the classroom at random and have them stand in the right place with their card, creating a timeline.
This is an example of how to use Jamboard to practice timelines. Each of the 9 post-its here represents an event from the news article. Students can use the mouse to drag the events into the chronological order presented in the article. This is another activity that I typically do in pairs. So I create a slide for each group before sending students into breakout rooms. And I create a teacher slide at the end of the deck. When all the students come back from the breakout rooms, I typically like to do a whole group learning check.
Next, we'll work on a specific reading skill. In this lesson, compare and contrast. Let the learners know that they'll compare events from the events of 2020 and see what's different and what's the same. Have them draw a Venn diagram, okay? On the left side of the diagram, have them write in the past, okay? On the right side, have them write now. And then in the middle, things that are the same. Working alone or with a partner, they write events from the story in the correct categories. And for the middle category, they can use their own ideas to describe how the past and the present are the same.
It might seem like this is a lot of Jamboard activities, my friends. For my own class, I decided to identify only a maximum of 3 to 4 technology tools to use throughout the whole semester, because one of my goals was to have the students have a chance to learn new tools, but also to feel like they had a chance to master the tool and gain confidence. Since Jamboard's connected to Google and there are lots of templates, shapes, and images available, I don't have a very steady drawing hand, and my students very often laugh when I try to draw circles in person. So I love that I can pull up an image of a Venn diagram and stick it on this slide. In this simple activity, students create Post-it notes in Jamboard, and they write events from the story and slide them into the correct circle. You could even have students brainstorm additional events.
I'm sorry, I'm afraid.
So another great post-reading strategy we can work with is the vital skill of visual literacy, one that I think we don't give enough, pay enough attention to. Practice reading a graph or chart from an article, be one way. Have students ask and answer questions about you could have students create their own chart or graph using information from the article, or using data collected from class. And this could be a poll or an opinion related to the story. You could even have students show the information by creating a different type of graph or chart than the one that's provided. For example, a vertical bar or a line graph, a pie chart, or if you have artists and students who like to draw, use a pictograph, right? Mix things up. So for this activity, we're using a story from the News for You archives called No Blondes Allowed. It's from the March 18th, 2020 edition, and will pop up if you type blondes, B-L-O-N-D-E-S, in the search. I'm going to read just an excerpt to provide background and flavor. Here I go. On Monday, February 17th, students saw a sign hanging over the school's front door. It said, blondes use the side door. Jan Brown was a blonde 8th grader at the time. She remembers the day well. Dark-haired students were blocking the front door. When Brown went in the side door, she saw a banner saying, "No blondes allowed." It was strung across the stairwell. Hall monitors teased and bullied blondes for 2 days. Teachers wouldn't call on blonde students. Blondes couldn't eat at the same lunch tables as other students, and they had to use separate bathrooms and water fountains. Boy, aren't you glad we didn't experience anything like that in our country? Yeah, I know. What could we do with this article? So much. You could use the blonde theme from this story as a launch pad and do a Zoom poll if it's virtual, and or you could have students create their own graph using data from your class, right? Hair color in the class, right? How many have brown hair, black hair, blonde, red, white, silver, gray? I left bald out just to be kind to others like me. You can even work on math. News for You articles are packed with numbers, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, fractions and decimals, ratios, percents, or how about conversions, right? There are frequently references to metric measurements, foreign currency, and a lot more. Make the math real by applying it to the story and personal or class situations, right? You'll engage them if you make it relevant. How does math relate to my life? Man, was I that student. For example, using the class data from the blonde graph activity, students could work on fractions, decimals, ratios, percents. 20 out of 50 students in the class have brown hair. That's 2/5 of the class, or 4/10, or 0.4, or 40%, right? I mean, just endless. I could go on all day with this.
For fluency work, we can read the passage, modeling proper pace or prosody, and have the students read along with you. If you're teaching virtually, one of the things I really like is that News for You Online's audio feature is great for readers who are less proficient or who might struggle with pronunciation. They can click on read and listen to the full story, or they can click on any sentence within the article to hear that sentence read, and they can follow along and practice. They're able to repeat that as many times as they would like.
Next, students analyze and use word parts. This article is perfect for teaching the suffix ment, M-E-N-T. The lesson to drive home is that it's important to know the definition of suffixes so that you'll know what the new word means. And this is a good example, by the way, of direct instruction, which I mentioned before, working on vocabulary. First, we explain and then model usage of the suffix. Explain that the suffix ment is known as a noun suffix because when it's added to the end of a base word, which is usually a verb, the new word gets used as a noun, thus a noun suffix. Explain that the suffix ment means the action of doing something, or could be the result of an action, and support that with examples using the words, right? Move, movement, statement, treatment from a story, okay? And then provide definitions of the root words, identifying the part of speech and using them in a sentence. Next, you'd convert the root words and use the new words in a sentence. And now that you've shown them how to do it, have the students brainstorm other words that end in M-E-N-T to do this on their own, right? They might come up with judgment, argue, punishment, and I love this one, impeached, because it's one of the vocabulary words in the story. And that provides us with a great opportunity to connect the skill to the passage. For vocabulary review, Have students write text-dependent questions using the vocabulary words, and then they could swap questions with a partner and answer them, also using the vocabulary words. For example, they could make the question, name 2 presidents mentioned in the article who faced impeachment, right, from impeached. President Nixon faced impeachment in 1974. He left office before he could be impeached. President Trump was impeached in 2019. The Senate found him not guilty in early 2020, and he was impeached again, right, in 2020, and found once again not guilty in 21. Finally, we could use one or both of these activities found in the News for You Teacher's Guide to wrap up our lesson. The group chat, right? Historian Thurston Clark says, many things are hitting us all at once. And with what hope? What do you think he means? Do you agree with him? Why? Why not? Or discuss with a partner and write down at least 3 ideas to support your opinion. Do you think Black people's lives in the US will change after these protests? Why? Why not? Right? Great discussion opportunities, great writing opportunities with the vocabulary from the story.
Okay, I know that for some of you who teach ESL, you might have been looking at that story and thinking, this is a little bit too hard for my students, depending on what level you're teaching. That is at the higher end of the News for You reading. We're going to look at an article that's about mid-level now. And in addition to using News for You to develop reading skills, we're going to talk about how these articles are also great for teaching critical thinking and for preparing your students who want to move on into more complex high school equivalency work. Distinguishing fact from opinion is a really important test-taking and life skill. The purpose of this activity is to help learners practice how we tell the difference between fact and opinion in legitimate news articles. And I know there are even a lot of questions about what is a legitimate news article. I like to begin by asking the students to define fact and opinion and to give some examples of each. For our purposes today, we're going to use these definitions. You can see here in black and white, a fact is a statement proven to be true or false based on objective evidence. And much more colorfully here on the right, we have opinions, a statement that cannot be proven true or false, what someone thinks or believes, or something that is subjective. After you've settled on definitions for fact and opinion, point out that reporters writing a factual news story should work to be impartial and keep their opinions out of the story, while people who are writing a review, another opinion article, or a letter to the editor are usually trying to persuade the reader to accept their views. News for You regularly does fact and opinion and true, false, and I don't know stories and provides exercises to go along with them.
Individually or in small groups, ask students to brainstorm words and phrases they might see when the writer is offering an opinion. If teaching in person, you could have them write on sticky notes. Right? If it's a virtual session, you could have them go to breakout rooms and have a designated scribe recording their responses. Or you could have them type responses into a shared Google Doc. You could even have them text to a class WhatsApp group, right? Set a reasonable time limit based on student level. When the time is up, share ideas for all to see. And here are some possible responses. Right? Opinion, words, and phrases. Assume, feel, imagine, suppose. Believe, have a feeling, likely, suspect. Be of the opinion, hold, maintain, think. For this activity, we're going to use a story from January 13th, 2021's issue of News for You. Once again, if you're willing and able, click on the archive in News for You online. And this time, type Pompeii, P-O-M-P-E-I-I, in the search box. Takes me back to my Navy days. Aye, aye. Two more. I know I'm not funny, but doggone it, I make myself laugh. So 2 more ancient bodies found in the ashes of Pompeii is what should appear as I think the second result. Click on that to view the article with us. And again, if you can't, don't sweat it. I'm going to share the important stuff on my next slide. But if you can participate, then great. And I encourage you, because you now have the password for the next couple of weeks, go in and explore and check out this article on your own time. So here we could have the students identify each sentence as either fact or opinion, calling out telling words or phrases, right? You can do this sentence by sentence as you read the story together, paired in person or in chat rooms that you can dip in and out of for more participation. Or you could pull specific sentences and post them on a whiteboard or on a Jamboard. So as an example, here's some statements from the article. Let's race through this together and keep in mind that we may not agree on some of my answers. This could be a good opportunity to allow students to explain their reasoning and or to teach research skills to see if statements can be verified or disproven. Here's one. The ancient Italian city of Pompeii sat less than 1 mile away from the bottom of Mount Vesuvius. Fact or opinion? And if you'd like to post your vote into the chat, you may. We're not going to take a lot of time with this, but let's make this as participatory as we can.
Greg, it is storming here and I'm having extreme technical difficulty. I can't actually see the chat at this moment.
Yikes. All right. Well, I wonder if I can. Yeah, a lot of people saying fact. In fact, everyone's saying fact. And that's what I said as well. Fact, right? In 79 AD, that active volcano erupted. It buried the city of Pompeii under ash. Fact or opinion, folks? Fact, fact, fact. Fact, fact. I think the facts have it. Fact, fact. Fact with a capital A, that's absolutely a fact. Thank you for that. We're in agreement. How about this one? Recently, 2 more bodies were found. Fact or opinion? Golly, I'm not even going to wait. How is that an opinion? Recently, 2 more bodies were found. That's a fact. Jack? Experts believe they belonged to a rich man and his male slave. The 2 men were trying to escape the eruption. Fact or opinion? Oh, we got some opinions here. Oh, opinion, opinion. Someone said fact, opinion. I love it when we get different votes. This is what tipped me off when I saw the word believe. Experts believe they belonged to a rich man. So I said opinion. Now, of course, this is experts, and we could go back and forth here. But here again, this could be an opportunity to investigate this and look, right, do some research. Starting in the 1800s, experts began to pour liquid chalk into the empty spaces left by the bodies. The chalk filled the spaces and hardened. The ash was then chipped away, leaving casts of the bodies that look like statues. Some are so detailed you can see the fear on their faces. fact or opinion? Fact, fact, fact. Okay. I think the facts have it. Right. Now, I might argue, it says some are so detailed, you can see the fear on their faces. But is it fear? Is it? When I visit my in-laws in Japan, the expression on their faces could be mistaken for fear. But I know better. I know it's just endearment and they're just really excited to see me. So we don't have to argue about this one. I'll do that with my wife. Moving on. I'm calling this fact. Experts found the two men buried in a layer of ash at least 6.5 feet deep. Fact or opinion? Fact says 1, 2, 3. Yeah, the facts have it. It seems that the pair survived the first ash fall, but they died in a powerful blast that took place the next morning. What do you think, folks? We calling this fact or opinion? Wow, more O's than my breakfast cereal. Can it have both is the question. That's a good point. Can it have both? Seems that the pair survived, but they died in a powerful blast that took place the next morning. Calling it opinion because it says seems, but then it says they died in a powerful blast that took place the next morning. I think it could have both. And there again, this is great for critical thinking, right? Get the students really thinking, as we are. The men appear to have taken shelter in an underground hallway of the house. Fact or opinion? Opinion, opinion, oh. Okay, the spaghetti O's have it. Yes, I am hungry. Sad. Appear is the word, and we're calling this an opinion. One of the men was likely between 30 and 40 years of age. What do you think? Lots of opinions, but someone said fact, right? One of the men was likely between 30 and 40. It says likely, right? But if this is a fact, one of the men was likely between 30 and 40 years of age. That could be interpreted as, yes, fact, likely. It didn't say one of the men was between, in our opinion, but likely. Okay, I said opinion. The other man was younger. Not a lot of room for discussion there, but one person said opinion. The other man was younger. Well, based on one of the men was likely between 30 and 40 years, the other man was younger, that could be an opinion, couldn't it? This was a lot simpler when we had people who didn't think as hard as you folks. I said fact. He was likely between the ages of 18 and 25. You're catching on. Likely, and I said opinion as well. His spine showed signs of heavy labor. How about that one? His spine showed signs of heavy labor. Yeah, was it heavy labor? I don't know. If these are, medical specialists, then maybe. Good question. I said fact. That's why experts think he was the other man's slave. You get the idea here. Think, okay, he was the other man's slave. But experts think he was the other man's slave could be an opinion, but that's why experts think he was the other man's slave. That could be fact, couldn't it? Gee whiz. Bex, we got to pick an easier activity next time.
This is a really good opportunity to talk with students about how difficult it can be to distinguish the difference between a fact and an opinion, and to talk about how, if you want to verify something from a piece that you're reading, where do you go to look to confirm whether or not this is a fact? So this could also lead, if you're teaching especially a higher level class, this can connect to the CCR research standards where you pull together information from multiple sources.
Sure. Also a good opportunity to introduce a graphic organizer, right? You could have 2 or even 3 categories as we did: fact, opinion, and right? Or not sure, not enough information, maybe could be the third in that graphic organizer. You could hand out a photocopied graphic organizer in person for an activity, or again, if it's virtual, you could use a Jamboard and have the students drag sentences to the correct box. Well, Bex, what do we have for folks?
It's goodies time. So we have some templates for you. As Sid already mentioned, you have a couple of weeks of free access to News4U Online. You can just keep going to news4uonline.com and type in that password SidBex for access. The first time that your students log in, they will also need to use the password, so feel free to share it with them and with as many colleagues as you would like. When somebody has access to News4U, it's an unlimited number of users. So we encourage you to pass that out like candy at Halloween. If your student uses the same device to log in, typically the device remembers this password, so they wouldn't have to put it in every time. I've also dropped a link to a Google folder into the chat. In that Google folder, we have some graphic organizers for you, as well as that DOE article I mentioned earlier. So you'll see a vocabulary knowledge rating chart, a personal dictionary template, a nice template for picking out key ideas and details from a story, some cause and effect organizers, a synthesizing organizer, a Venn diagram in case you are as poor at drawing as me, a template for sequencing, and we also have some activities for citing text evidence and matching reasons and evidence from a text. Is everybody able to access that? Yes, everyone is saying yes.
Yes, thank you. Great.
And we are also reminded that we have to end on time.
Yes, it's 11:06. We've got about, we got a little over 5 minutes. Anyway, with the time remaining, we'd like to open it up for any questions you may have. Feel free to put them in the chat. Comments, observations.
Elizabeth, I've dropped that link again. See if you can get it now.
Song requests. I warmed up this morning, so I'm ready to break out into song. No,
I encourage you all to ignore that.
Well, if there are no more questions, we will wrap this up and give the next presenter time and give you time to make your next session or whatever you're going to do. I'd like to thank you for your time and participation today. Thank you for your service, for your commitment to adult learners, and for the sacrifices you've been making on their behalf. Ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay optimistic, stay positive, just not COVID positive. And with that, This is Greg and Bex signing off. Greg Stoltz, 214-2468 up here in Syracuse. That's how you can reach me. I am your rep for New York and would be glad to field more questions, handle requests, take your comments, just get acquainted. You're welcome to drop me an email, give me a phone call. We can even Zoom. I'm going to be back on today at 1:30, from 1:30 to 2 o'clock. And I'm going to give an overview of our website and offer some more opportunities for you to try out some of our digital resources free of charge. Again, that's between 1:30 and 2 o'clock today. So stay tuned and enjoy the rest of the virtual conference. And if you're going out, enjoy the weather. Bex, so sad that you've got stormy weather out there. So
This was a good way to spend my morning. Thank you all so much for your participation and your kind words and everything that you're doing for students right now. I know it has been a challenging year.
indeed.
Charlene says it's sunny. I'm jealous, Charlene. Not looking so good in Chicago.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording now. Stop recording. Do you want?